9:30, welcome back. Daily show on this Monday morning. It's a warm one out there. Kids are back to school. Almost everyone in the Riverbend coverage area is back to school, and always great to talk with our friends at OSF Healthcare. And Lori, how are we doing today? Great to have you on the Zoom and great to have you on the show. Oh, Lori, I think, are you muted still? We're having some issues here in Lori here on the Zoom this morning. So why don't we do this? We'll take, I hate to do this to the audience. We'll take another quick break and we'll come back and see if we can fix Lori's audio issues. Maybe it's on our end and we'll come back after a quick one.
Discover Del Mar Public House, located in Godfrey's historic Clifton Schoolhouse. Enjoy bold flavors like homemade falafel, fish and chips, and rotating pasta favorites. Relax with local beers, half-price wine bottles, and summer poutine nights. The only thing missing is you. Open Wednesday through Sunday. Del Mar Public House, where great food, drinks, and friends come together. DelMarPublicHouse.com.
Can you hear me, CJ? CJ, oh, there we go. All right. I'm off. I'm logging off. Lori, can you hear me? Okay, I can hear you. Okay. CJ saying we're cool now. Okay, I'm muting you now.
When you need a project done right, on budget.
We're coming back because this is going to work this time.
Sorry.
No, don't ever be sorry. I'm always excited to talk to our friends at OSF Healthcare. And Lori, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. You know, kids are back into school. Almost everybody is. For the Riverbend coverage area, I know that maybe Edwardsville goes back tomorrow. And, you know, with that being said, it's always that time of the year where it seems like, anyway, that, you know, parents start having that conversation. Do we get the back-to-school checkups done? Do we get the physicals? And are we vaccinated? But, you know, there's so much more that I'm sure goes into, you know, making sure we're starting off on the healthiest foot possible for the school year.
Absolutely. I mean, health exams are definitely very important so that we can watch and make sure that they're developing appropriately and growing appropriately. But it also gives the family times to bring concerns to their providers, especially in regards to emotional readiness for school, any anxiety or concerns in regards to getting prepared for school. So it allows us as providers to incorporate all of this into like a well exam. So it's not just about, you know, them growing appropriately and their vision and hearing and everything is corrected, but it allows us to talk about things that will definitely help them prepare for school as well. You know, I had the same instance with my kids starting last year, and it definitely just emotional. She was very anxious and nervous. And so I think maybe like allowing those times if there's an open house for them to go for kindergarten open house, meet the teacher, allow the kids to see the school that they're going to be going to, as well as, you know, maybe doing a routine of like drop off in the morning, and this is how drop off is going to go. I think it eases a lot of anxiety, both on just the child and the parent.
Well, and you know, on top of that too, whenever we're taking our child in, what are some questions that, or maybe some thoughts that could help, you know, a parent maybe start generating some questions to ask? Because I think sometimes, especially for newer parents, it seems like, you know, you get in that setting and it's kind of new for everybody. So you don't really think about all of the necessary, you know, questions that you could have asked during that time. And then you go home and you're like, man, why didn't I ask that? And you're calling the nurses line again. Is there any thoughts that you could give out to the younger parents out there for how to properly kind of prepare themselves really for that checkup along with their child?
Yeah, I mean, reaching out, you know, to discuss with the nurses, like what can be involved in a healthcare exam, you know, talking about appropriate touch, non-appropriate touch, because we do head to toe physicals too, and including eyes, ears, and everything a part of our body. And so sometimes not talking about those things that generally you wouldn't do on a daily basis kind of helps relieve the anxiety for the whole physical. Getting an idea of what immunizations are going to be administered at those school physicals as well can also relieve some anxiety, so that the parents are prepared and can prepare the child as well for what they're having to look forward to in regards to the exam as well.
How far out should we book that back to school checkup?
So definitely I wouldn't wait until the last minute. If you can, of course, I would start booking them in the early summer to get them prepared, even though it seems like it's, extended amount of time out. However, in the couple of weeks leading up to school, most provider offices are slammed with well exams. But the important thing, I think, about getting those sports physicals and those well exams booked out early in summer is if there are concerns that are brought up, if there are things that are found on the exam, we can address those before those sports physicals are due or those exams are needed for school. So not waiting until the last, I would definitely do it a few months out if possible.
Absolutely. So do you recommend maybe a few weeks, maybe a month into the summer, start to plan that back to school checkup?
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely helps relieve the anxiety and stress from the parents' point of view, but it definitely gives ample time and opportunity to schedule those based on like your summer schedule, as well as not overloading the staff.
Have getting these physicals, and not really the physical and the wellness exam, but the documents, has it become easier to get, find out all the different things that you need to go back to school? Because I know for a while it seemed like, we had to print out the paper and keep it over the summer, or find it somewhere and make sure that we had everything just to make sure. I haven't been in school for a little bit of time. Has it gotten easier with the technology?
It definitely has. And I know I can speak on our office that we have the well exam forms there and the sports physical exam forms at our office, which I'm sure most provider offices do carry. Only, for kindergarten, of course, they need their optometry evaluation before they enter in a dental exam. And it's not something that needs directly done right as you enter the school. They do give you a couple of months leeway in regards to getting that done. We address it in office that these do need to be done, and we give them resources to find those availability offices that will allow for those exams in a meaningful time. But it can be very overwhelming, because I know growing up in Texas, we didn't have to see a dental or an optometry and provide those documentations. And I don't think that it's well discussed or talked about until you go to like those orientations. And so if a family's not able to go to those orientations, they're kind of blown off site and don't really understand what all entails going into kindergarten or even other grades.
Well, and I think that's what's, you hit on, and I was getting ready to kind of double back to that, is because, you said, even providing those resources just to say, hey, here's where you need to go. That can be so much help for a parent, because I'm sure getting a child ready for kindergarten stressful enough and ready for that first day of school, but also to know you have, somewhat of an advocate in a way when we stop by and see at OSF Healthcare, hey, here's where we can go and get this done, so we're all off to the best start. And as we start to talk a little bit about back to school vaccines, what are typically the normal vaccinations that are required for a child to enter the school year?
So kindergarten, of course, presuming that you have all of your immunizations at your 2, 4, 6 month and year examinations. The ones that are needed are the measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, inactivated polio, and DTaP. And those are just done in two immunizations, 2 shots. And so those are required to enter kindergarten.
And then as you get older, we start to see the vaccination start to drop off, correct, after about 13?
Yes, after 4, you actually go quite a bit of length of time without immunization, so 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Unless you do your annual flu shot. But of course, the ones required by school, it's about a 7-year gap. And so at 11, you will get your meningitis and your Tdap booster. And then we start introducing the human papillomavirus at that age as well.
Really interesting. And honestly, I didn't realize it was a 7-year gap. And it's kind of good information to know. And it's one of those things too, whenever we talk about vaccinations, I feel like that's why it might be, is it better to really have these appointments ahead of time, just because you don't know how your child could react to a vaccine, if it's, not going to be too hard on their stomach or anything, but just, sore arms and all of those things that could make for a troublesome day.
Yeah, absolutely. Immunizations do have common side effects. Fever is one of them. Pain at the site of injection is one of them. The important part of staying on schedule for the immunizations is the timing. There's a lot of research done when the CDC puts out the schedule for the immunizations, and the timing is based on the best protection and the immunity that is optimal to protect against the virus for that age.
Okay.
So, measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox are optimal at the age of 4 to 6, and meningitis is optimal at the age of 11.
Wow. Well, and it really seems like they're doing all they can to combat really just an outbreak, and just some of the work that goes in. And it's just fascinating to see how the bigger medical wheel kind of turns when it comes to vaccinations in those age categories too.
Absolutely.
Well, and honestly, as we're getting back into school, I'm sure that one thing parents are all around the Riverbend dealing with right now, especially the older where their child is the sleep schedule. And I know that, for a lot of us, we wanted to run around and have fun when we were kids, and, sleeping in, late and going to bed really early in the morning. How important is it, and when do you recommend to start introducing that sleep schedule back in before the school year starts, so we're not going to bed at 3 in the morning and waking up at 6 ready to learn?
Absolutely. So that does take, sometimes kids, as soon as they get into summer, they're staying up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and of course, sleeping until 10, 11 o'clock. I would definitely start doing it a couple of weeks. And I know some of us are a little late in that just because they had school start last week, and some are starting this week. So if it hasn't already started, like a sleep schedule reset, I would definitely start doing that. But making sure that you're keeping a consistent wake time and sleep time, even on the weekends as well. You can provide that gets them back to a natural sleep cycle, of course. Provide a relaxing bedtime routine, which can include a warm bath, reading at nighttime, avoiding things like caffeine and sugar at bedtime as well. So limiting snacks and ice cream and sodas and Capri Suns and juices. Providing an optimal sleep environment. So somewhere that's going to be dark, where it's not very bright, and they can actually get into their natural sleep cycle, quiet and cool. Reducing exposure to blue light that is found on, of course, tablets and phones. You can even encourage or use things like melatonin at bedtime just to help with nighttime sleep as well.
And now, is the melatonin one thing that you have to is the dosage, should that be on the that container per child, or do you recommend a half of a melatonin at first, or one, or if something like that is calling for it?
Yeah, generally I start about half a milligram to a max of 3 milligrams,
Okay.
depending on the child's size and other neurodivergent concerns as well. But I would say a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, I would start at half a milligram. And if that's not helping, I would maybe go up to 1 milligram max at that age.
Interesting. And, another thing that we are starting to talk more and more about is that healthy food option when it comes to, school, or our homes and everything else. And school lunch is no different to that. As we're preparing to get our students' lunch boxes ready, what can you provide in terms of just ideas? What have you seen just in your day-to-day with just advice and different things that we can do to cover the healthiness of the lunch, but also make sure our child's enjoying the lunch and actually eating it?
Sure. I would go beyond just a sandwich, and I would incorporate things like hummus, and carrots and celery, which is good sources of vegetables, yogurts and berries, even doing something like a pinwheel rainbow that includes some type of spread and hummus with some vegetables incorporated and meat, making it a little bit more fun. But however, it's important also to realize that kids have allergies. And, making sure that you're addressing and you're talking to, especially the younger ones that may not know the ingredients that are in their lunch boxes, not to share their lunch boxes, because someone sitting next to you might have an allergy to peanuts per se. And, I know personally, my daughter's like school, the class snacks were peanut-free class, but they were allowed to have peanut butter in the cafeteria. And so if somebody's allergic to peanut butter, a 6-year-old may not realize that their lunch has peanut butter and share it. And then of course, putting that other child at risk for anaphylaxis.
Really important to talk about there. And what else can you recommend in terms of, making sure that we're keeping our children safe, especially if they do have a food allergy? And I'm sure that school districts already have, action plans in place or that point of contact. But is there a way that even with a younger child, we can, explain, not really explain, but have just an idea for them to kind of a routine to go into if something like that were to occur?
Making sure that, of course, like when you are going for your well exam, you're asking for the asthma action plan,
Hmm.
as well as like an allergy action plan to include things that are definitely needed for an anaphylactic episode. An EpiPen, of course, you need one for home and one for school. Albuterol needed if you're having like issues with breathing. Benadryl, of course, and usually the schools require a prescription written from the providers just so that they have it there on file. But making sure that, of course, even like the teachers and the staff realize that, he doesn't have just like, itching, hives, that kind of allergy. This is more of an anaphylactic, itching to the throat, vomiting, swelling, and kind of the importance of appropriate action. So as well as incorporating that into like the cafeteria, if we need to update like the staff in there, as well as certain kids that have allergies, maybe even labeling his lunchbox with like a medical alert bracelet that he has an allergy or she has an allergy to something specific would also be beneficial.
It's really, honestly, that's a great tip and really important information. And another thing that's so important, and we're seeing more and more of this now, is, the social emotional readiness of children as we're getting back in. And I'm sure that you guys see it across the board, whether it's going to school for the first time or it could be a child returning to school, and just maybe having some issues or they're ready to learn. What's your advice to parents as you're kind of monitoring, just how our children are doing mentally as they head into that long school year?
Yeah, I mean, the school can be a very exciting time as well as very stressful
Hmm.
on both the kid and the parents. And I know it's important for the parents to be able to talk to their kids about their emotions and allow the kids to express their emotions in a very safe and comforting environment. They should encourage their kids to talk about their emotions every day. Build an opening and accepting relationship at home. Also talking about your emotions
Hmm.
as well. Like kids feed off of their parents. And so if you are a very anxious person, which some people are in the world, talking to them about, okay, I'm having an anxiety issue right now. This is making me nervous, but this is how I'm dealing with it. I'm taking deep breaths. I'm doing this step 1 and 2 to help with how I feel. Now, if we're ever in that situation, you can try that as well. Making sure that we're using phrases that are very coddling and compassionate. So not just blowing them off like, oh, you'll get over that,
Right.
but just tell me, okay, I understand you had a bad day. How did you have a bad day? What kind of things bothered you? Allowing them to express themselves instead of just blowing off their emotion that they're going to get over it.
100%. And as we go into, that conversation too, just and we're walking, through school, the bullying that's going on. I know that a lot of school districts are still dealing with that issue here locally. And as we're talking about bully awareness, what's important for parents to spot and recognize, maybe everything was great in the summer, maybe everything was great for a few years, but now, the first month of school is just not going off to the right start. Could it be a bullying situation?
Absolutely. I mean, kids definitely have visual cues for parents to recognize that something could be going on. If they used to be a very outgoing, kid, carefree, always engaging in activities with the family, but now they seem more withdrawn. They're staying in their room more often. They're not wanting to do things that they normally do, like go outside and play with their friends, hang out with the family. Those are all definitely cues that something could be going on. Even some non-visual cues like complaining of abdominal pain or not feeling well, sore throat, all of those types of things that generally they're not exhibiting those symptoms, but they're saying they have those symptoms. And it could be that they're just having a lot of anxiety and fear going to school, that they could be in a situation where they're dealing with somebody who is being a bully.
And that's really good just for parents to keep note of, because you just never know when that situation could arise, and always keep an eye out for those things is really important. And a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about just getting that lunchbox ready, and we discussed, that allergy emergency plan and action plan, and you brought up the asthma action plan. And I wanted just to circle back for that. We have a couple of minutes left. How important is it really, to have these plans in place? Because to me, it's one of those things where life's busy and you think everything's going well, and we haven't had maybe an episode or attack in a long time when it pertains to asthma, or you name it, or allergies, and all of a sudden, you could be in a really dire situation if you don't have this put in place.
Absolutely. And you don't want to find yourself or your kids in those situations
Right.
at all. And so even though you haven't had those attacks, and we have several that, in the past have had to use albuterol like 2 or 3 years ago, but haven't had to do it now.
Right.
And certain things that were their triggers at that point, and that they haven't had to use it because they haven't had those triggers in the last couple of years, or they haven't been involved in things that would trigger those. And now as they're getting older, they might be more involved in sports. So definitely talking to them about, even though, that they haven't had those issues in the past, having it on hand and letting the school know that they have it on hand, or that they could have these type of symptoms, is very important, because you definitely don't want to get to school and then not have the medication or what is needed to help protect your child.
Absolutely. And, as we go wrap up this conversation, which has been fantastic, and for the folks at home that don't realize, I didn't have my calendar right, so we could have done this 2 weeks ago, but I was, all wonky. And Lori, I really appreciate your time. But, as we start really focusing on back to school, and you hit on it earlier, and I wanted to touch on it then, but I knew we were coming to this, is it seems like the importance of a routine is just invaluable. Whenever you truly have a routine in place, you really have a proper start to each and every morning. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's your thought on really having a definite routine in place, not just for the kiddos, but also for the parents?
Yeah, having a structured routine definitely fosters an environment of emotional stability. It decreases like any anxiety, any apprehension in regards to like school and what the structure or the routine is going to be at school. It can be very terrifying and overwhelming doing new school. You might be in a new town where you don't know anybody. And so it starts with definitely getting like a good nighttime routine and sleep. And then maybe getting like a decent breakfast to help our body, have the energy that we need, and the proper cell function to function throughout the day. But it definitely helps just overall provide like a safe and structured environment, and I think relieve the anxiety and the apprehension to a daily basis, especially with school.
Well, and let me ask you this, just a quick follow up to that. If there's a special day, like, let's say there's a field trip day or there's a half a day, is it still important to stick to that routine? Because I know sometimes you'll see the kids maybe start to hang out, stay at their friend's house that night if they know that, we're getting out, we're only going to school for 2 hours, or we're only going to the zoo today. Is it still important to make sure that no matter what day of the week it is, that we're sticking to that routine, or are there some exceptions sometimes?
I definitely think it's important to stick to a routine just on a daily basis, as it keeps them very structured, gives them adequate sleep, gives them, it allows for like the apprehension and the anxiety to be decreased. They kind of have the expectations and know what is going to be coming forth, so there's not something that's new in their environment. I definitely have a kid at my house as well, and allow like those certain time frames where you can definitely stay up later. But I definitely don't think that it's appropriate during like a school week, as you need a full 8 to 10 hours of sleep to be able to pay attention and learn appropriately, and be able to function in class. And so even though it's only going to be 2 hours of a day, it's still the most beneficial for them to get the 8 to 10 hours of sleep that they need, so that they can actually learn and grow.
Absolutely. And one final question for you. And this is really one that I think that, we always should talk about, and that's the power of breakfast. Is the old wives, is it a wives' tale when we say breakfast is the most important meal of the day? How important is it really to get a jump start when it comes to not only eating a breakfast, but eating a healthy one too?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of benefits to eating a breakfast. One, it helps like keep and maintain a appropriate body weight. It also helps provide better memory, attention, and grades. So eating breakfast, it gets their metabolism going early during the day and allows, it's less likely for us to overeat in the afternoon. Incorporating things like, of course, like fiber and grains will help with weight control and, secondary issues like constipation. Adding calcium and vitamin D, of course, will help with bone building and boost immunity and help with like viruses throughout the year.
Absolutely. And Lori, before I let you go, it's been a pleasure talking with you. And thanks for sticking in with us as we figured out the Zoom maze that was today. But really just before I let you go, what's your final takeaway? What's your final message to Riverbend families and parents as their kiddos are already into that first official week of school today, or they're starting their first official day tomorrow?
Take it in stride. All of us providers are there for you, of course. And so if you ever have any questions or concerns, always reach out to anybody. You're not parenting alone. Everybody is doing this as a community and we're all together.
Absolutely. And Lori, you're located at the Godfrey facility, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that's on Godfrey Road?
Yes, sir, right next to Walmart.
Absolutely. And just wanted to make sure we got that location because you guys have a fantastic urgent care service over there as well. And I just speak volumes of it. I think it's the best.
Thank you. Yes, it is wonderful there.
Thank
Lots
you.
of great staff.
Absolutely. Lori, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. It's 9:56. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with top of the hour news next around 10 o'clock right here in downtown Alton. You're watching our daily show on Riverbender and Roku TV.